Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick, and we're here for the next in the series of the UFA targets. Joining me today is young man Ayush Narayan. Hope I pronounced that correctly, Ayush.
Yep, perfect.
All right, great. And who's your guy you want to advocate for?
Yeah, so today I'll be advocating for Milton Williams to join the Ravens in free agency. Definitely a name I think we can unfortunately be a little bit familiar with. Was it, week 13?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think he could definitely add some value to the Ravens.
Really emerged as a pass rusher this year in a big way. Unfortunately, a lot of that came against the Ravens when he just seemed to be in the backfield all day, getting pressures and flustering Jackson in a very difficult game for the Ravens. One of the only ones that they were truly beaten on both sides in the trenches, and probably should have lost by more than a score.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely one of those rare games where I feel like we didn't actually beat ourselves, and we kind of got outplayed.
All right. So what's the need you're addressing here for the Ravens with Milton Williams?
Yeah, so I guess the way I viewed it is if the Ravens were to make a free agency move, I feel like the ideal circumstance is to address the most obvious way to make the team better. And I feel like the Ravens have kind of done this in the past. Derrick Henry was a pretty obvious one last year. So with this year, I feel like pass rush and havoc really on the defensive line would be a really obvious way to make the team better. We lost Jadeveon Clowney in 2023 at the end of that season. And after that, I feel like the actual havoc and the defensive line has been kind of missing. In terms of our pass defense, last year, I feel like we had the talent to be a very top secondary. Arguably, I think should have been a top 5 secondary and a pass defense. However, they were underperforming expectations despite how much talent they had. I think adding a guy like Milton Williams would create that pass rush havoc and really get that those pressures coming on the front four that could help us get these pressures, sacks, and ultimately turnovers to boost our pass defense.
Okay, so let me hit the other side of that coin for a moment, because the Ravens, of course, were second in the entire NFL in sacks this last year. I think they found out after week 10 with the light switch-like changes to the defense and how effective the pass defense and the overall defense was, exactly which cylinders were not firing for those first 10 weeks. And it was at that safety position where Jackson and Marcus Williams both played very poorly. Once they got that fixed, this was the best defense in the league all of a sudden, better even than the Eagles, down the stretch. Now, the one thing they were missing was turnovers in this group. And I guess I'd question how Milton Williams specifically is likely to improve the turnover rate dramatically.
Yeah, definitely. So my impression of Milton Williams, he's arguably one of the best, a top 5 pass rushing defensive tackle in the NFL. His run defense may not be as stout as his pass rushing skills, but what he's known to do is create havoc. I think I've said that quite a bit, but he's known to actually create that when rushing the passer. And I think that this could force the quarterbacks into making unforced errors with interceptions or result in forced fumbles. And this is something I think we saw a little bit of in the Super Bowl. I believe that he actually had a forced fumble or maybe even 2 in the Super Bowl. Not quite sure about that off the top of my head. But I think that really pressuring quarterbacks into making bad decisions is something that we should try to see if we can invest in as a team.
Okay, I'm with you on that. Obviously, any kind of reduced time for the quarterback generally will help your coverage unit, and very well can end up in some bad or mistimed passes that end up with a higher probability of being intercepted. So, getting first pressures is really important. He's a guy that had a very good rate of pressure and a pretty good rate of closing this last year for an interior guy to either hit the quarterback or to knock him down at least, which is something you can't always expect to be duplicated. So a high pressure rate with a really high close rate, I just don't expect as effective a pass rush season the next year.
No, I completely understand. That's something that we've seen with Justin Madubuike, coming off an insane 13 sack season, or around that margin, to something a little bit more reasonable now. Now, the one thing that I think that he could do for our defense is, even if he's not necessarily the one closing in on these sacks or getting the sacks, I think that the team overall would be able to close in and actually get those sacks.
Sure.
So something I'd really like to see is the synergy between a really great front three, which I think could be Madubuike, Travis Jones, and then Milton Williams. I think as like a trio, being able to, let's say if Milton weren't able to close in on a sack, Madubuike or Travis Jones could get some pressure in that sack as well. So I think in terms of unfinished sacks, we just mitigate that by having a guy like Milton Williams there. But in terms of his specific individual production, I think it's a very good point that it's not necessarily the full story for Milton Williams.
Okay, so I like one of the things you said there, and I kind of want to focus on that a little bit with the next question, which is who's Milton Williams replacing on the roster and in terms of playing time, very importantly, because Milton Williams is a 3-tech, and the Ravens have a 3-tech who played about 80% of the snaps last year and is one of their highest paid players on the team.
Yeah. The most obvious spot I saw for him there was to replace Broderick Washington, playing opposite to Madubuike. Now, I know that Milton Williams generally plays on the left side. However, he has played on the right side in the past, something he did against us, unfortunately. And I think that if he does end up being a scheme fit on the right side, I think it could be a really, really dangerous trio.
Okay, you can find a way to get Milton Williams on the field, I guess, if you want to use him as a situational pass rusher. If you want to make it be Madubuike and Milton Williams, I don't necessarily think that's the best pairing for reasons you probably heard me say before about Travis Jones. He's really the key to the Ravens pass rush in terms of commanding that double team. But Williams is another penetrator. He's a good one-on-one guy against a guard or a tackle probably. The Ravens just don't play very many total snaps the entire season with 3 defensive linemen on the field. So that's relatively unusual. So you're probably going to be frustrated in the number of times you can get Milton Williams and Madubuike on the field together. You can, of course, have 2 pairings and have, if it's Michael Pierce or if it's somebody else, nose tackle 2025, we'll call him alone. Didn't you know it's possible to get THC shipped right to your door? Mood delivers premium 100% federally legal THC directly to you. I'm talking about delicious, high-potency gummies, top-shelf flour, home-baked cookies, vapes, anything you'd find at a dispensary, you can now order online and have it shipped quickly, discreetly, and conveniently right to your door. And every Mood product is made from pesticide-free cannabis grown on America's best small farms at prices that won't destroy your wallet. Best of all, not only is every Mood product backed by a 100-day satisfaction guarantee, but as I mentioned, listeners get 20% off their first order with code RAVENS. So head to mood.com/ravens, check out their online dispensary, and let Mood help you discover your perfect mood. And don't forget to use promo code RAVENS when you check out to save 20% on your first order. With Milton Williams as the second pairing after Jones and Madubuike are taking up a substantial portion of the pass rush snaps.
Right. I think obviously the alignment of the defensive linemen will be pretty variable, just knowing the Ravens' history. I'm still a little, I think there is still a little bit of an unknown with the Ravens' defensive scheme. I think that we could see potentially some changes with how the Ravens decide to play their defensive alignment. So I think if the Ravens were to bring in or were deciding to bring in Milton Williams, it would probably have to do with their supposed ideal scheme or ideal alignments that they could see. But I think it could be really interesting to see a Travis Jones and a Milton Williams together as a pairing.
Okay. No doubt about it. I mean, Travis Jones and Milton Williams is another possible. The Travis Jones and Nnamdi Madubuike play together almost all the time, meaning specifically that Matabike was on the field for almost all of Travis Jones's snaps. There were cases where Matabike was on the field also with other players like Pierce, but particularly during the second half, and when Jones was healthy, he was on the field basically with him as a pairing, and they went to that sort of a system. Now, can they ever get to base defense or play some other system where you have another player on the outside in an uncovered situation where you only have one outside linebacker? I'm going through my head how much use they're going to get out of Milton Williams. Well, clearly he's going to cost some significant dollars.
Right.
How much use can they get out of a player like that when they already have Nnamdi Madubuike, who has a tremendous overlap in his skill set and obviously necessarily role as well?
Right. I think that's a really great point. I guess if the Ravens were to see Milton Williams as another one of those kind of Swiss Army knife pass rushers that they really love to have, I think they could get a little bit fun with some of the alignments we could see. I can't be exactly certain of it, but I hope it's in the Ravens' mind to bring Kyle Hamilton closer to the line of scrimmage, try to add some of that more creativeness back to the defense. And I think having probably one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, who also plays an interior position, could just help out with some of these more wacky alignments that could, again, give quarterbacks trouble. Schematically, I'm not entirely sure what it would look like, but if you do have any thoughts on how they could piece together, I'd be really happy to hear them.
Okay. All right. So they played Matabike on the edge occasionally. Usually that's setting up something, a twist, a stunt, a blitz, to try and do things differently. I guess the same thing could be done. Oh, well, probably the same thing would be done with Matabike. Keep him on the edge and leave Milton Williams on the inside somewhere. It's an interesting idea. It's certainly a lot of money. But that's, I guess, the last question we need to really talk about is what would you pay Milton Williams? How long would you be expecting to get him?
Yeah, so Milton Williams is a guy who is notably hard to predict a salary. And I think it would have to do with the way teams value the defensive line. Now, right now, I could see an inflated value for the defensive line coming that we just saw a Super Bowl victory that had a really dominant defensive line. But I think that there is a chance that teams could see Milton Williams' production maybe as a function of guys like Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, and could end up paying him less. So I'd like to give a range here. I think he could be north of $20 million a year. I'd say let's give the range of between 18 and 25 million a year. I think if he's closer to that 18 mark, he may be a valuable addition to the Ravens to really spice up a defense and just add something new to what they could get, versus $25 million, let's say like Aleem McNeil or some of these other defensive linemen that have gotten paid, like Matabike too, that may be a little bit out of our reach.
Okay. Well, I think there is a team out there that wants him at 18 million, and I personally think that's far too high. And for the Ravens, and my reasoning is that the overlap with Matabike reduces his value to this team, whether or not it's a realistic price for Milton Williams. So if what I would pay is almost not meaningful anymore, but my number for the Ravens might be something like 12 million or something would be, I think, a number that I think might be reasonable to pay for him. But he'll have other shooters that will obviously make that not meaningful. The similar situation exists at tight end for the Ravens, though. They have both Likely and Andrews there, and each of them kind of reduces the other's value in a certain way. It's nice to get fresh legs on the field, nice to be bringing guys in and out of the game, and it's nice to have Likely's run blocking sometimes, and Andrews is a designated pass catcher, and each of them certainly does some very valuable things for the Ravens. But if either of them were here alone with one rookie tight end and then Kohler as a primarily blocking tight end, their statistics would go significantly up. They get a significant share of the other's targets. And that's where I think that the Milton Williams thing, I had difficulty really getting behind it. I love him as a player. I think he'd be a great addition for some team. I'm not convinced he's the guy for the Ravens at a reasonable price.
Yeah, definitely valid thoughts about the way the Ravens could use him. And of course, I mean, he's a really expensive player, and for that price, if he is seen as just a role player or a guy who can only be a guy who would take away snaps from another really great player we have, it's definitely valid to see his value wouldn't be as high as what we'd actually end up paying him. I guess it would fall on the Ravens to see what kind of contract he could get from the Ravens. Maybe if it's closer in that 12 million range or even less, which I don't know if it will happen. He could potentially add some value, but yeah, he may end up getting paid a lot more.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. Ayusha, I appreciate you coming on and making the case for him. Tell folks where they took football with you online.
Yeah, definitely. I do have my Twitter handle. Don't really post much, but always love to kind of chat about things. So it is BALFN100. I guess any cool conversations, just I'll slide right in.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on, Ayusha. Other folks out there, if you'd like to do a film study short, whether it's on a UFA, potentially a trade. I had somebody come to me about it with a trade idea. If you want to do that sort of thing, that's fine too. If you want a big name UFA, please hit me up very quickly, because 3/12, the league year will begin, and your content isn't meaningful anymore if somebody else has already signed the guy. So in particular, the big names I'm trying to get done early. Ayush, thanks again for coming on.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.